history of Super Mario. In the history of video games, very few characters have transcended their medium. Fewer still have survived multiple technological revolutions, cultural shifts, and generational changes. Yet, for over 40 years, one character has remained constant. A man in a red hat. A plumber from Brooklyn. A character with no backstory, no dialogue, and no ending. This is the history of Super Mario. Not just the story of a video game character, but the story of how modern gaming was shaped, standardized, and saved. To understand Mario, we need to travel back to 1981. Nintendo, primarily known for toys and trading cards, was struggling in the arcade market. They had a warehouse full of unsold radar scope cabinets and a desperate need for a hit game. Enter Shigeru Miyamoto, a young staff artist with no formal game design training, but a head full of creative ideas. Miyamoto's task was to create something completely new. Drawing inspiration from the love triangle in Popeye cartoons, he conceived a story where a gorilla kidnaps a carpenter's girlfriend, and the carpenter must rescue her. The gorilla was Donkey Kong, the girlfriend was Pauline, and the carpenter, he was called Jumpman. Here's a fascinating detail. Jumpman wasn't even supposed to be Italian. He wore a red shirt, blue overalls, and had a mustache purely for technical reasons. The red shirt and blue overalls created contrast on primitive monitors. The mustache eliminated the need to animate a mouth. The cap hid the difficulty of animating hair. Every aspect of his design was a solution to a technical limitation, and it accidentally created one of the most iconic character designs in history. Donkey Kong was revolutionary. It was one of the first games to feature a storyline with cutscenes, simple animations between levels that advanced the narrative. It introduced jumping as a core mechanic, which seems obvious now but was groundbreaking in 1981 when most games involved shooting. The game was a massive success, earning Nintendo $180 million in its first year. And that's in 1981 dollars, which in today's dollars is closer to just over $640 million. So when did Jumpman become Mario? This story is part legend and part truth. So according to Nintendo lore, during a heated meeting at Nintendo of America's warehouse in Washington, the landlord, Mario Segale, barged in demanding overdue rent. This name stuck. Now, whether this exact scenario happened is debated, but Mario Segale was indeed the landlord, and the character was renamed in his honor. And Mario's profession was also changed. In Donkey Kong, he was a carpenter. By the time Mario Brothers arrived in arcades in 1983, he'd become a plumber. Miyamoto explained that the game took place in sewers, so it made more sense for Mario to be a plumber. The 1983 game introduced Luigi, Mario's taller brother in green, as player 2. The two-player co-op gameplay was ahead of its time. Financially, Mario Brothers wasn't as successful as Donkey Kong, but it established some crucial elements, one of them being the jumping mechanic that would define platformers moving forward. Another is the cooperative multiplayer that would become a Nintendo staple. And most importantly, it redefined Mario's character. He was becoming his own entity, no longer just the guy from Donkey Kong. 1983 was a dark time for video games. The North American market had crashed pretty catastrophically. Atari had flooded the market with poor quality games, and retailers had lost confidence. Major companies went bankrupt, and many believed that video games were a fad that had run its course. By 1985, the industry had contracted from $3.2 billion to just $100 million. Nintendo saw an opportunity. American retailers wouldn't touch video game consoles, so Nintendo did something clever. They marketed the Nintendo Entertainment System the NES, not as a video game console, but as an entertainment system. It looked like a VCR. It came with a robot and a light gun, and this disguised what it really was, essentially a video game console. Now, just to touch on the robot and the light gun, while we're on the subject, the light gun, a lot of you may have remembered from the game Duck Hunt, but this robot, which was acronymed ROB, was basically an interactive toy robot that you plug into your NES and you can interact with, essentially. Anyway, this hardware was only half the battle. They needed a game that would prove video games weren't dead, and this game was Super Mario Bros., released alongside the NES in North America in October 1985. And it changed everything. So, what made Super Mario Bros. So revolutionary? First, the level design. Miyamoto and his team, including the brilliant Takashi Tezuka, created level design that taught players through gameplay rather than text. The first level, World 1-1, is studied in game design courses worldwide. That first Goomba you encounter on the level, it's positioned so you'll naturally jump over it or on it, teaching you the core mechanic without a single word of instruction. The music, composed by Koji Kondo, became as iconic as the character himself. Kondo was given the impossible task of creating music for an entire game only using 3 sound channels and 1 noise channel. He composed the main theme in about 5 minutes on a keyboard, trying to capture the feeling of running and jumping. And it's now one of the most recognizable melodies in the world, right up there with Beethoven's Fifth. The game introduced power-ups that would become series staples. The Super Mushroom that makes Mario grow, the Fire Flower that lets him throw fireballs, and the Superstar that grants temporary invincibility. These weren't just gimmicks, they changed how you approach levels, adding strategic depth. But here's what really set it apart: the sense of exploration. Previous platformers were single-screen affairs. Super Mario Bros. Scrolled sideways through expansive worlds. There were secret areas, hidden power-ups, and warp pipes that led to underground bonus rooms. Every level had secrets, and this encouraged experimentation and replay value. The numbers are staggering. Super Mario Bros. Sold over 40 million copies, more than any other game at that time. It single-handedly revived the North American video game market. By 1990, 1/3 of American households owned a Nintendo, and surveys found that children recognized Mario more readily than Mickey Mouse. It wasn't just about sales, though. Super Mario Bros. Established the template for platform games that would dominate the next decade. The side-scrolling platformer became the genre of 8-bit and 16-bit eras. Every game company wanted their own mascot, their own Mario. And we'll talk about those competitors later. The game also cemented Nintendo's philosophy of gameplay first, graphics second. While competitors were focused on pushing technical boundaries, Nintendo focused on making games that were fun. The philosophy would guide them for decades. In 1986, Nintendo releases Super Mario Bros. 2 in Japan. But here's where things get interesting. American players didn't get this game. Why? Nintendo America's president, Howard Lincoln, played the Japanese Mario 2 and declared it too difficult for American audiences. He wasn't wrong. The Japanese sequel was brutally hard, and it had devious level design and punishing difficulty spikes. So what did America get? A game originally released in Japan as Doki Doki Panic, I think I'm saying that right, was completely reskinned with Mario characters, and this became Super Mario Bros. 2 in America and Europe. And it was radically different. You could pick up and throw enemies. You could choose between 4 characters with different abilities, and levels were vertical as often as horizontal. And many fans saw through this and rejected it as not a real Mario game. Ironically, this fake Mario game introduced elements that became series staples. Shy Guys, Bob-ombs, and Birdo all originated from this. Character selection would return in future games, and the vertical exploration influenced later 3D games. What seemed like a compromise kind of became an innovation. The original Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2 was eventually released internationally in Super Mario All-Stars as the Lost Levels. Modern players can now experience what Nintendo thought was too hard for Western audiences in 1986. And they were probably right. Super Mario Bros. 3 arrived in 1988 in Japan and 1990 in North America. And this wasn't just a sequel, this was Nintendo showing what the NES could really do after years of experience with this hardware. The game was massive. 8 worlds, 90 levels, multiple paths through each world, an inventory system for items, and new power-ups including the revolutionary Super Leaf that let Mario fly. The Tanuki suit, a full-body raccoon suit, became instantly iconic. The frog suit made swimming easier, the Hammer Bros suit let you throw hammers, and each power-up changed the gameplay significantly. Levels were designed around these abilities, which encouraged experimentation. So here's something you might not know. Super Mario Bros. 3 was so anticipated in America that they made a movie about it. Sort of. This movie called The Wizard came out in 1989, and it was essentially a 100-minute long Nintendo commercial that culminated in the first public reveal of Super Mario Bros. 3. So there's a scene in this movie where a video game competition is taking place, and within that video game competition, Super Mario Bros. 3 is unveiled in sort of a teaser. This game sold 18 million copies and is considered by many to be the finest 2D Mario game ever made. It redefined every element of the original and added massive replayability through multiple paths and having several secrets hidden. And this pushed the NES software to its absolute limits. The graphics, animation, and level design were light years ahead of the original Super Mario Bros. 1990 brought the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and with it, Super Mario World. This was Nintendo's flagship title for their 16-bit console, and it had to prove that SNES was worth the upgrade. It delivered spectacularly. Super Mario World introduced Yoshi, Mario's dinosaur companion who could eat enemies and flutter jump. Yoshi wasn't just a cosmetic addition, he fundamentally changed the gameplay. Different colored Yoshis have different abilities. Baby Yoshis could grow by eating enemies, and Yoshi could run across certain surfaces. He added a whole layer of strategy. The game featured 96 exits across 72 levels. Yes, 96 exits, not 96 levels. Some levels had multiple exits leading to different paths throughout the game. The Special World unlocked after finding all the exits, and it contained some of the most challenging levels Nintendo had ever created. The Tubular level in particular has traumatized players for decades. Super Mario World sold 20 million copies and remains one of the best-selling SNES games ever. It also showcased Mode 7, the SNES's ability to rotate and scale sprites. Sprites being your video game character you see. While not as heavily used here as in games like F-Zero, special stages showed off this capability with rotating levels. So during this period, Mario wasn't just a platformer character. Nintendo was smart about leveraging their mascot across genres. Mario appeared in several games, such as Dr. Mario, a puzzle game that sold millions, Mario Paint, that let you create music and art, and introduced millions of kids to digital creation tools. Super Mario Kart, released in 1992, and created an entirely new genre, the kart racer. Every publisher tried to create their own kart racing game after Mario Kart's success. The game sold 8 million copies and launched a franchise that's now worth billions on its own. These spin-offs proved that Mario was more than a platformer mascot, he was a brand. Kids didn't buy these games because they wanted a puzzle game or a racing game. They bought them because Mario was on the box. 1996. The Nintendo 64 launches with Super Mario 64, and nothing in gaming would ever be the same. This wasn't just Mario in 3D, this was a complete reinvention of how platformers work. While other companies struggled to translate 2D gameplay into 3D spaces, Nintendo made it look effortless. Their secret was the camera and the controls. Miyamoto's team spent enormous amounts of time perfecting Mario's movement. He accelerated smoothly, he had a long jump, a triple jump, a backflip, a wall jump, and a ground pound. He felt weighty but responsive. The analog stick of the N64 controller, designed alongside this game, gave an unprecedented amount of precision. Mario could tiptoe or sprint and everything in between. The camera system let players control their viewpoint, and this solved the major problem plaguing early 3D games where players couldn't see what they were doing. The C buttons let you adjust the angle, while the camera mostly followed intelligently on its own. The game structure was revolutionary too. Instead of linear levels, you explored Princess Peach's castle, jumping into paintings that led you into other worlds. Each world contained multiple missions and power stars to collect. You could tackle missions in almost any order, and this non-linearity was unprecedented in platformers at the time. Here's a technical marvel. Mario had realistic animation. He looked around while he was idle. His eyes followed objects. He got dizzy after spinning, and he panted when he was tired. He had over 700 different animations, and this level of character expression in a 3D game was unheard of in 1996, but it made Mario feel alive. Super Mario 64 sold 11 million copies, but more importantly, it became the template for 3D platformers such as Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Banjo-Kazooie, Jak and Dexter that all followed. Game design courses still study this game's level design, camera work, and control scheme. 2002 brought Super Mario Sunshine for the GameCube. This game is fascinating because it might be the most divisive mainline Mario game ever created. It's set on a tropical island, and Mario is equipped with a water pack that lets him spray water, hover, and rocket into the air. Now, the game is gorgeous. The water effects were stunning for 2002, and the tropical setting was a bold departure from traditional Mario worlds. The water pack added new movement options and puzzle-solving opportunities, and the game had numerous defenders who consider it underrated, but it also had a lot of critics. Some felt that the water pack made the game too easy. The game was shorter than Mario 64, with only 120 shines compared to Mario 64's 120 stars spread across more worlds. More controversially, the hardest levels, the secret levels where the water pack is removed, suggested the game might have been better without the water pack at all. Still, Super Mario Sunshine sold 6.3 million copies and showcased the GameCube's capabilities. It experimented with new ideas, not all of which worked perfectly, but Nintendo's willingness to experiment kept Mario fresh. A safer sequel might have sold better, but it wouldn't have been remembered as distinctly. So if Mario had one true rival, it would be Sonic the Hedgehog. Created by Sega in 1991 to compete directly with Mario, Sonic was designed to be everything Mario wasn't. Fast instead of methodical, edgy instead of cheerful, and most importantly, cooler. Sega's campaign at the time was, Genesis does what Nintendo don't. And it was aimed squarely at Mario. And for a brief, glorious moment, it worked. Sonic the Hedgehog sold 15 million copies, Sonic 2 sold 6 million. Sonic became nearly as recognizable as Mario, and Sega's market share grew from 15% to 65% in North America. The console wars were real and Sonic was winning, but Sega made crucial mistakes. When transitioning to 3D with the Dreamcast, Sonic Adventure, while successful, didn't have the same revolutionary impact as Mario 64. And subsequent Sonic games became increasingly inconsistent in quality. Sonic 2006 is considered one of the worst games ever made. Sega eventually left the hardware business, and Sonic games now appear on Nintendo consoles, which is a strange twist of fate. Today, Sonic still has fans, and recent games like Sonic Frontiers and the Sonic movie show the character still has staying power. But he never reclaimed that early 90s magic, when he genuinely threatened Mario's dominance. The success of Mario and Sonic led to an avalanche of would-be mascot platformers in the 90s, and most of which are forgotten today, but include the likes of Gex the Gecko, Crash Bandicoot, Bubsy the Bobcat, Aero the Acrobat. There was also Earthworm Jim and Rayman. Spyro the Dragon became a PlayStation staple. What separated Mario from these pretenders was consistent quality. Nintendo treated Mario games as flagship releases. They would delay games as long as they needed to perfect them. Meanwhile, most competitors rushed their games to the market to capitalize on their characters' momentum. So one bad game could kill a mascot franchise, and it often did. The mascot platformer craze eventually died down in the late 90s as 3D gaming shifted towards different genres. But Mario endured because Mario wasn't just a trend, he was the foundation. 2007 Super Mario Galaxy might be Nintendo's most ambitious game. The premise, Mario explores space, jumping between planets with their own gravitational field. You could run around spherical planets, walk upside down on surfaces, and experience gravity shifting beneath your feet. It was disorienting, innovative, and absolutely brilliant. Super Mario Galaxy received near universal acclaim. Many reviewers gave this game a perfect score, and it remains one of the highest rated games of all time. It sold 12.8 million copies, and it reminded everyone that Nintendo could still innovate at the highest level. Super Mario Galaxy 2 released in 2010, and it refined the formula further. It's arguably even better than the original, with more creative level design and better pacing. Today, these games represent Mario at his absolute creative peak. While Super Mario Galaxy pushed 3D boundaries, Nintendo hadn't forgotten about 2D Mario. 2006's new Super Mario Bros. For the DS proved that traditional side-scrolling Mario still had massive appeal. The game sold 30 million copies, more than any 3D Mario game. The 2009 release of this game for the Wii added 4-player co-op, and it sold over 30 million copies, making it one of the best-selling Mario games ever. The series continued with New Super Mario Bros. 2 and New Super Mario Bros. U. Though by this point, critics felt the formula was getting kind of stale. The games were fun but safe, lacking the creativity of Galaxy or the original NES games. 2017, the Nintendo Switch launches and Super Mario Odyssey arrives that same year. This game is remarkable for many reasons, but many focus on the new addition of Cappy, Mario's sidekick, his hat companion. The game features massive open-ended kingdoms to explore, from New Donk City, a realistic city with realistic humans, to a food-themed kingdom, to kingdoms based on Mexican Day of the Dead aesthetics. Each kingdom is packed with moons to collect, with over 800 in total, encouraging exploration and experimentation. The Odyssey sold over 26 million copies and received widespread critical acclaim. It felt fresh while honoring Mario's legacy. The game literally takes you back to the original Donkey Kong in one sequence, complete with 2D graphics. It's a masterclass in game design that respects the past while innovating for the future. let's talk about Mario's broader cultural impact. The Super Mario Bros. Movie of 1993 was, let's say, ambitious. It bore little resemblance to the games, featured dystopian cyberpunk aesthetics, and confused basically everyone. It bombed. For nearly 30 years, it was the Mario movie. Then in 2023 came the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which changed everything. It was made by Illumination Entertainment and grossed over $1.36 billion worldwide, making it the highest grossing video game adaptation ever, and the second highest grossing animated film ever. It proved that Mario's appeal transcends gaming, that he is a cultural icon, period. Mario has appeared in over 200 games, not just platformers, but sports games, RPGs, puzzle games, and more. The Mario franchise has generated over $36 billion in revenue, making it the best-selling video game franchise of all time. For context, that's more than Star Wars, Marvel, or Harry Potter. He's been on cereal boxes, had a breakfast cereal named after him, appeared in countless commercials, and is featured in theme park attractions at Universal Studios. So I found this really interesting fact, a Mario fact, while doing some research. And it's that Mario's full name is Mario. And it's confirmed by the 1993 movie and later acknowledged by Miyamoto, which means that Luigi's full name is Luigi Mario. And they're the Mario brothers because their last name is Mario. So what have we learned about Mario's incredible journey? From his humble beginnings as Jumpman in Donkey Kong to becoming the most recognizable video game character in the world, Mario has been at the center of gaming's most important moments. He saved the video game industry after the 1983 crash. He pioneered 3D gaming with Mario 64, appeared in over 200 games spanning every genre imaginable. He's generated more revenue than any entertainment franchise in gaming. And after nearly 40 years, he shows no signs of slowing down. What makes Mario special isn't just his iconic design or catchy music, though those help. It's Nintendo's unwavering commitment to quality. Mario's competitors have come and gone. Some, like Sonic, still exist but never reclaimed their peak. Others, like Crash Bandicoot, exist primarily as nostalgia properties. Mario endures because Mario adapts. 2D, 3D, motion controls, motion capture, VR experiments, Mario has tried it all while maintaining his essential character. From a handful of pixels jumping over barrels to a multimedia empire worth billions, Mario's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. He's more than a character. He's an icon. He's a legend. He's proof that great game design is timeless. Anyway, here's my watercolor painting of Super Mario fixing a sink, 'cause he's a plumber.